You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in. Hello,
Hey,
friends.
Rick.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for showing up finally.
Yeah, no shit, right? Sorry, I'm so flustered right now. It's not even funny.
Right, tell him what's up.
I feel like I need to take a breath. I think we need a collective breath.
We do.
Just so we don't kill each other.
Well, while you guys are breathing, I'm gonna go ahead and have a drink.
Adjust that camera so we can see the rest of your body so your head isn't floating.
Did you want my chest hair? I can do that.
Ooh, there it is.
Now we're talking. I'm gonna get all Magnum PI on you.
Holy shit. Guys, she's a Gen Z representative. She has zero idea what you're talking about. You old bastard.
But you do. You
old bastard. Holy fuck.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. Right. Welcome back, everyone, to Remotely We Are One. I am your host, Rick Haney, joined by my highly esteemed remote work cohort, Kaleem Clarkson.
Hey there, sir. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Everything going well?
Yeah, it's going well. You look great today. The light looks good on you. Your hair looks good.
I feel great. I'm properly moisturized. Thank you.
I was going to say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's been a great day. Despite the rain, it's been awesome.
Okay.
Hey, just a few quick words to our listening audience. Since you know how to find us now, do us a huge favor and go to ratethispodcast.com/remotely one. If you could do that for us, we would be ever so thankful if you could just go there, give us a rating, give us a review. That would be incredible. And I say this because since 2015, Remotely One is one of the largest communities of remote work professionals with over 2,500 Slack members and 4,000 email subscribers. That's a big number, dude. That's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Growing.
So anyway, it's free to join. So go check it out at remotely1.com.
Free.
And now with that out of the way, Kaleem, give us a tease or two about today's guest.
Every guest we get on here, I get a little nerved up. I'm not going to lie, I get a little nerved up because you talk to them and they seem just like cool, normal people, but then, they're stars. They're stars. We got another one today.
We do.
Yes.
Okay.
So just a couple of things here. She went to the University of Southern California, the USC. This one is unbelievable. She had her boating license before she had a driver's license, sir. We know.
Really?
Yeah. We know a lot of people like that. Oh, yeah.
Like sea captain?
Yeah.
Kind of thing?
Ooh, we didn't even ask. We're gonna have to
We'll have to dig deep
into that. Definitely.
We'll dig that one. Yeah.
Okay. She's a founding member and co-lead of buildthefuture.work. Love that name.
That's a great name.
She's a work futurist and speaker. She is also a LinkedIn top voice for Gen Z. Rick, do you know what Gen Z is?
Who?
She is also the director of growth and marketing at Cafe. Listeners, viewers, please give a warm welcome to Danielle Farage.
Hi, Danielle.
Yes, Danielle. Yes.
I love the applause.
Yes.
I feel like you guys should have one of those synthesizer boards where you could press the applause button.
So
we should.
Rick,
You strike me as yeah, you have that.
So Rick brought that up, and I was all curmudgeon about it. I was like, "Do we gotta have sound effects?" He's like, "Dude, come on."
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, that's so Gen Z," and I'm like, "Who the hell is Gen Z? Jennifer Zucker? I don't know who that is."
Jennifer Zucker.
Gosh,
that's great.
You kids. Anyway, you're a super sport for dealing with our juvenile humor. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for finally getting the right time. I was like, yeah, we'll meet at 7:30.
Yeah, that's right. So Danielle, before we get too deep on this, I've got to ask, what is a work futurist?
Yeah. So I actually came up with the term,
Mm.
and I feel like some sort of a trendsetter because after I did, I started seeing work futurists all over LinkedIn. And I was like, I wonder how they define it. But how I defined it when I came up with the term was someone who educates a lot, reads a lot, and is able to explain concepts at the intersection of culture, identity, and workplace. And in my opinion, what I'm trying to do is just elevate collective consciousness for people to understand each other better and therefore ask better questions and be able to work together in a more productive and exciting way.
Insightful. I love it. I love it. What a great concept.
So, how did you decide to become a work futurist? I mean, like at what point? So, first you go, tell us the story because the story's not super long. I'm assuming since you are LinkedIn top voice for Gen Z, I'm making horrible assumptions here. What years are Gen Z? Do we know that? The Google? Can we look that up? Does anybody know the
I mean,
years
I
of
know it.
what are the years again?
So it's people born typically between 1997 and I think the cutoff is like 2012, 2010,
Okay.
something like that. It's basically the next generation after millennials are Gen Z, and then after us are Gen Alpha, which is a whole other story.
Right.
Oh boy.
So you first get your boat license. Let's start there.
Yeah, I got my boating license at 12 years old.
Okay. Super awesome.
Just defying the odds, you know, trying to be a strong woman. And I grew up in New York City.
Okay.
Went to a private Jewish school, which I'm very lucky to have gone to. I have an immigrant dad and a mom who is from California. And I give a lot of credit to them for working their butts off and being able to send, 3 kids to Jewish private school in Manhattan and then USC, University of Southern California. Let's just get the record straight there. And
well done.
I've made some content about this in the past, but in my opinion, from my own experience, I feel like when you come from an immigrant family and you have, whether you're an immigrant or you have a parent who is or a grandparent, and you're really close to your roots, you're able to appreciate every level of success a little bit more because or you've heard of what it was like to not be at that level, to not have the opportunities. And so when I went to college, I read this stat about like 70% of people who graduate don't actually leverage what they studied. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, if my parents are able to send me to this school, and thank God I don't have any student loans, like I think about all the opportunities I've been afforded, no way I'm going to waste it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, okay, what are the things that like I don't like? Well, I really don't like what corporate America is doing to my 2 older siblings. And so I was sort of like, oh, well, that's an interesting problem. Like, isn't corporate America supposed to give you a job that you love and then you can support yourself and you create a life that you love, outside of work and at work as well? And it wasn't that case for a lot of people, but yet everyone around me was trying to chase after this dream, this corporate dream, right? Big 5, finance, real estate, whatever it was. And so I was trying to make sense of all this while also trying to decide what I wanted to major in. And I landed on this sort of idea of like, okay, so if people aren't happy at work, it's a symptom of a larger problem, which is that people in the boardroom making decisions about them and for them don't actually understand the people they're impacting. And so I made it my mission to study social sciences with a psych emphasis, to be able to walk into any room, listen and meet people, listen to understand them, and be able to explain, right, take that information back to the boardroom to help them make better decisions about people. And so in 2020, when the pandemic happened, my graduation gift in 2020 was the pandemic. And what I did with that, and also I ended up simultaneously in a toxic job, I ended up really understanding firsthand, okay, this could happen to anyone. And it's not just corporate, but really it's about leadership. It's about empathy. It's about putting your money and your actions where your mouth is. And that was when, I quit my corporate job and I started speaking on Clubhouse and sharing my story about being in this toxic environment and leaving it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Clubhouse, like literally that's where I got started. And so I started getting into these rooms with these like crazy renowned people. Like I was, at a job that I loved at this point, and I quickly learned about the HR space, the entire thing, right? DEI, HR, talent acquisition, employee experience. And I realized that employee experience was the thing that I wanted to focus on, while also learning about all these different other things that are happening inside of an organization that really do impact the culture. So it all adds up. And it was around that time on Clubhouse when I started doing like room recaps, and I started sharing my own personal story and struggles and providing some insights for job seekers. And then that eventually turned into leaders tuning in to what I was saying, because I was representing a generation that not a lot of Gen Zers on LinkedIn, unfortunately.
Right.
Now it's a little different, but I recognized that it was my responsibility as someone who had been through this, who understood the problems, who understood how we could really progress and improve, and to bring my opinion to the table. Because as we reimagine work, shouldn't we be reimagining it for the new workforce instead of going backwards in time?
Yeah, I like that.
You put all this together a lot sooner than most people. Like a lot of people don't go into trying to discover themselves at the collegiate level with all of this in their head, right? I mean, you put this together very early on. Did you ever feel like you were a little out of your element, or was this something that just resonated so hard with you that it was just, there was no question that this is what you wanted to pursue?
It was more like a hunch, I think. And in college, and in high school, going backwards, like I did a lot of critical thinking growing up. So, and that's not a common trait for my generation, unfortunately. I think a lot of us are, we grew up with social media. We're the first digital generation, and a lot of people don't really have the critical thinking skills straight off the bat, but I was really lucky to have those skills early on. And so I looked at the world in more of like a critical way. And I think that the hunch was really like, well, if I don't know what I want to do, because that's where I was at, I was like, let me just go with what I think I want to explore. And that turned into working at an internship that was related to what I thought I wanted to do, experiencing toxic culture firsthand, and then juxtaposing that experience with a culture that I really did love, and seeing the difference, the stark contrast between a really great leader and one that wasn't great, was the thing that made me realize, oh, I don't want any other young professional or person for that matter to go through what I went through. And so I committed myself to going in these Clubhouse rooms to talk about how to get out of the toxic culture, how to know what that looked like, what that felt like. And I started writing a book about toxic cultures that then turned into a book about how do you identify the right culture for you, which I'm still writing, because I think that, my story isn't over. And I've gone through like definitely ups and downs of like working for a global team, working in the remote workspace. Like it's just been a total ride. And I think, I'm not done writing my story. So
that's for sure. That's
amazing.
Danielle, you said a couple of things there that I'm just curious. What would you say to people? You hear this a lot, especially in the business world. Don't tell me how to run my business. I've been running my business for years. What do you know?
It's how it's done.
It's how it's done. Like, what gives you the right? What do you know? You literally just graduated college in 2020, right? Like, you've never even experienced the professional world without COVID. So, what do you know, Danielle? I
Yeah.
don't want to hear from you. What would you kind of say to that, to those types of responses, which I'm sure are a lot more common, especially, somebody who's posting on LinkedIn. We all read the comments, there's always going to be
Oh my
those
gosh.
people, right?
I have a
So,
Yeah.
whole list.
yeah.
I have a whole album on my phone of like all the negative comments.
Yeah.
What's your response to that as far as somebody who's like, listen, I've been studying HR for years, decades. What's your response to
Yeah.
somebody who say, you don't have enough experience to actually provide that
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah. I love that question. Because I think, automatically you hear, this 24-year-old, she's calling herself a work futurist. Who the heck is she? Right.
Mhm.
And totally, I get it. I 100% understand. And I think for a long time, credentials were the thing that preceded someone's perception, right? Like, or the perception of that person,
Mhm.
doctor,
Right.
lawyer, Miss, Mrs., all these like titles that we put in front of someone's name. And I think we live in a very different world now where anyone can be a journalist. Anyone can write their own story. Anyone can publish a book. Anyone can start a company. You don't have to have those credentials to make a difference in the world. And you look at, I don't have to say all the names, but like Gary Vee, I just saw Gabby Bernstein last night, like all these, Jay Shetty, I'm seeing in a couple months, like he was a monk, and like
He's
I think
amazing.
a lot of the world would like laugh at that, right? But
Yeah.
think about what he's made and the lives that he's changed
Mm.
throughout his history. And that's what I focus on. I focus on the positive. I focus on the hundreds of messages I get saying, thank you so much for talking about remote work in a positive way, because I'm in Mexico and like I'm able to do this. And I
Hmm.
have, the confidence to be able to say, you know what, let me do what's best for me
Mm.
rather than how we used to do things, which is everyone conform.
Yeah.
So I think of the work that I'm doing, and on the age thing and the background, like there are so many Gen Zers like me. Like you're looking at a physical representation of the next generation. I have an immigrant parent. I'm Middle Eastern. I speak two languages. I have a deep cultural appreciation for where I came from and my homeland, which is Israel. That's a huge part of my identity.
Hmm.
Secondly, of course, I grew up, going to private school and all that. At the same time, I continue learning. I will not stop learning for my entire life. I'm a digital nomad. Like there are all these parts of me. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a woman entrepreneur. So when you think of like also the stats, right? Like Gen Z, I think it's 48% own one or more businesses, 62 or something percent say they own a business or are planning to in the next year. So when you think about those things, then you think about, this is what I think about, is like, who would I rather hear from? If I am at an organization or if I'm going to a talk, wouldn't you rather hear from someone who is more like you and who is closer in age to you and who you can relate to easier
Mm.
than a 50-year-old white man? Sorry, Rick, but
Rick's only 28 years old, Danielle, if you didn't know
oh,
that.
Seriously.
shoot.
Time to pick out a new moisturizer, I guess.
Actually, your skin is glowing.
Yeah, you
Isn't it
do
though?
look great, guy. You do look great. I'm telling you, dude. I'm
I
telling you.
feel it. I feel it. It's the oil of Olay. It's oil of Olay. So, so, what you're saying resonates with me a great deal. And what I'm hearing is, you're not saying it out loud, but I'm hearing the word flexibility a lot. Not in this particular conversation, but across the board. As I feel like that's what people are really moving toward. Can you talk a little bit about Do you think that's what Gen Z wants? Is flexibility more than anything?
100%. When you think about, I always say, like, think about the micro and the macro.
Mm,
So, in order to understand a generation or what someone might want, and this is a tool that you can use as a manager, right? Before you go to the table and you ask them and you waste valuable time on like stupid questions, you have to look at the macro, right? Like, okay, most of this generation has grown up with phones. Phones are increasingly personalized. Therefore, you might deduce that this generation wants the opportunity and the flexibility to be able to craft different things in their lives, just like they do with their phones.
mm,
And then you look at the micro, right? How does this person operate internally? Do they like working on a bunch of different projects at the same time, being a part of different teams? Or do they like working on one thing? And so, based on behaviors and knowledge of a generation and of a specific individual within that cohort, sometimes you can, use that to your advantage and to present better options for them or ask better questions. But something that someone said to me today, I was talking to Shuli Steele, who she works at Impact Group, and she got me thinking, because I was like, well, how do you account for everyone having like different sort of needs when it comes to working, right? Like maybe someone doesn't want to go to the office, maybe someone wants to, like, how do you account for those differences when you're designing workplace policy? And she was like, well, you can't just like say you could do whatever you want or ask them what the employee wants first.
mm.
She actually thinks that you should go to the leadership and create some sort of bucket of like, okay, here are the possibilities. Here are the things that we're definitely not going to budge on. And here are the things that are more in like the gray zone. And then you go to the table and you say to employees, okay, here are the options. What would you like? And although in some cases, with like Jamie Dimon, like that's not going to work, right? Like if you just come out and you say, oh, this is the way it's going to be, that is questionable. But at the same time, when you go to people with those questions and with options, you give them an opportunity to choose. And although it might not be exactly what they want, there is that same sort of element of like, oh, I still control this to some degree. I do, however, always opt for the flexibility argument, because I just believe that we're very dynamic human beings. Like human beings are inherently dynamic. And like if I want to go travel for 2 weeks, Citi just said to their employees, you can travel for the last 2 weeks of the year and you can still be working. And like I really applaud that, because that's sort of like one of the biggest things for me. It's like if I feel like I need to get out of New York City and I want to go to Europe for 3 weeks, I want to have the flexibility and ability to do that.
Sure.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're seeing more and more people wanting to do things independently on their own. The gig economy is growing all the time. Back to the statistic that you were talking about as far as how many Gen Z people want to have businesses, that's pretty high. One question I kind of wanted to ask as far as like your career, when you had that one experience that was kind of toxic, you said, and you're like, I don't like the way this is feeling, and you moved on. How did you become the director of growth and marketing at Cafe, and what was the parameters you were looking for? Like what were some of the signs that you were looking for in order for you to say, hey, you know what, this company's working for me, and tell me a little bit about what you're doing there now.
Yeah. So I basically in 2020 landed, new job. I was working at Wade and Wendy, which was like crazy AI HR tech. It was really cool. And I loved that job like so much. And I had a great manager after this horrible experience. I was managing this community of like HR, talent acquisition, DEI, and we were doing these like virtual conferences of like 2,000 to 5,000 people online. It was really amazing. And I was like helping to like literally lead these conversations. And about 9 months later, we were acquired by a larger company. And not only that, but then we were double acquired by a public company. And I knew deep inside, I was like, I'm not a corporate girl. Like, maybe I will be in the future, but like, I'm very much into startups right now. I just feel like they're really great ways to learn as many skills as possible. And I loved community building. I still do. I love it. It's part of my life. And so in my next job, I was looking for an opportunity to create more content and keep doing like some sort of community building. You know, my three non-negotiables in terms of what I was looking for in a culture were, one, I wanted the flexibility to travel. Even better if like work was paying for me to travel.
Right.
I formerly thought that like consultants were the only people that got to travel the world, but quickly realized that wasn't true. So that was one. And I knew that like having a global perspective, like I had and, you know, prior to like my career, would have a really big impact in the long run. Cause like the US is not the only economy in the world. Sorry to break it to you, everyone. And then second, I knew I wanted something where like I aligned with the mission. It's like mission driven company. And then third, I knew I just like wanted to like the people I worked with. And those were like definitely my non-negotiables for this job. What ended up happening was like I was talking to a lot of people, I was networking as my former job was like ending, and I just so happened to like meet this woman named Nellie Hayat. She works at Density. She's also a remote advocate. If you haven't interviewed her, definitely try to get her on here. And she introduced me to Tom and Arthur from Cafe. She was like, oh, I invested in this startup and they're really great and they want to meet you. They're looking for like the voice of the company. And I was like, that sounds interesting. And I end up getting on a call with Tom. And a week later, they sent me an offer letter.
Cool.
And I sort of got to craft my title. And actually, I was just featured in a Business Insider article last week where I talked about, you know, having the flexibility to craft your own title, because your career is it's your business. Like it's
basically it's your brand. So why
exactly,
you know, have control over the title, because you're always building on that. I love that, by the way, because so many people have ridiculous titles that they hate. And they're just words. You can just be like, nah, that's not going to be my most of the time, they're going to be like, what? Be like, yeah,
right.
I don't like that title. They'll be like, okay, well,
Right.
what do you want? And they'd be like, this. And most of the time, most people are going to be fine with it, you know?
They didn't care. So I was like, oh, I want like a director level role. Cause like it was a small startup, you know, and they were like, yeah, whatever you want. And so I became the director of growth and marketing. And over the past year, I've really helped us to like Americanize the brand, Americanize the concepts, the product. And now I'm sort of shifting into a new role, which is very exciting, more on the content side. Cool. And it's actually going to be called Head of Dynamic Work.
Yes, I've seen that one.
Yeah.
I like that title.
Great.
Yeah.
I love it. And so it's basically a lot of like interviewing, dissecting concepts, writing, blogging, podcasting, possibly. And just a lot of like fun and collecting data and just a lot of the stuff that I love to do.
Fantastic. Oh man. I'm fascinated by all of this. I mean, as a Gen Xer, I don't know how much I want to admit that these days, but well, Kaleem's right there with me.
We never get any love. Are we called the forgotten generation now? I think I've heard that.
So sad.
Gen Xers.
Yeah, in this context, I think we might be, because you got to figure we grew up. We've seen the internet was
too digital. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we were introduced. We were like teenagers when the internet came about, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember when MTV aired. I mean, that's like crazy to me that all these things are happening. And I remember all these things I remember a time when none of it existed. So what are you hearing from Gen X and older, if anything? And do you think that they could be a big voice in this movement as well?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of studies about how Gen X and Gen Z have a lot in common. Largely driven actually by what you're talking about is, the fact that we sort of grew up in our more formative years with technology. So that's one. And secondly, I think that Gen X sort of got stuck. Like the boomers are the generation that's really like old guard for the most part. Like this is definitely a generation.
Huge generation. Yes. We all know that there's some dope ass, hip, up to par, exactly
totally.
Boomers. We're just, we're talking here.
Yeah. But like, I think that Gen X is a generation that largely values a lot of the same things as Gen Z, which is transparency, and they want to be purpose driven, but a lot of the time have sort of been like shut down by their bosses, have wanted to do things a new way because maybe of the technology background, right? But have been shot down and then had to sort of shepherd in the millennials, which, they wanted to do things completely different and had to sort of wrangle them, but not in a way that they wanted to, but in a way where they're like, were commanded to. So I think that a lot of like the Gen Xers are really embracing this idea of remote work. They're embracing that all these concepts. A lot of them are like leaving the workforce to like start their own businesses. And I think that's pretty consistent across a lot of the generations. But yeah, I think that Gen X and Gen Z are like sort of like, lost brother, sister sort of vibes.
I love it. Yes. That's exactly the answer I was
hoping for. We're back, Rick. We're back. She brought us back.
There's hope for me after all.
Yes, X.
So, Danielle, I have one last question before we wrap things up here. And that question is, would you be willing to share with us either a comical or inspiring kind of moment that sticks out in your mind from all of the time that you've been in remote work?
The flexibility. What are some of the great
What are some of the more memorable moments that you've had while working remotely?
Ooh.
Okay, I have to think a little bit. Hold on. I have one.
Perfect.
There it is. Yep, we knew it.
Okay.
We knew it.
So it has to do with an old coworker of mine.
Okay.
And I was in Europe and we were traveling on the like equivalent of the subway. And I was sort of like interested in, as a remote worker who, travels across the world to like come see my team. I was like, I wonder like, what impact do you think that I have on the rest of you? Like,
you asked her this question. You were talking to her. So you're on the train. So you were just like, "What's my impact?"
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, I'm trying to get a raise.
Okay.
Oh, I feel you. Yeah. So how have I been doing?
Yeah, I was like, because feedback is important, and like, definitely. I really value people who can be honest with you. And she was like, honestly, I hate when you come. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
yes!
I'm kidding.
I thought that was gonna be
I thought that was it. I was like,
that was going on the highlight reel.
I was like, this was going on. This was definitely the best thing we've ever heard.
Oh God. No. Okay, so we're on the train, and I ask her, hey, like, what do you think my impact is? And she's like, when you come and you walk into a room, you light it up. And when you're here, there's so much more action and life and ingenuity in the room than when you're not here. And we really feel the impact.
You bring it.
You bring the spark.
And that was the moment when I realized, and I had sort of like a hunch around this already, but that was the moment that confirmed that I was that culture person. Even though we don't have like HR or like people ops, like we're not that big. it still confirmed that I was the person who was sort of carrying the torch on culture. And I felt proud in that moment. And I loved that it happened when I was like there on the train. I'm like immersed, you know, in the everyday life of like a European.
Yeah, it's something you'll never forget.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That, I mean, you want to talk about a memorable moment. I would definitely remember that one. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Thanks.
You know?
And you know, I'm going to agree with her. You know, we've only been talking for less than an hour, and I feel like the three of us have just had this conversation like three friends that haven't seen each other in years. You know what I mean? It's like
I feel the energy.
Yeah, that's certainly what you brought to this show. So,
Like,
thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no, I just I'm firing my therapist. I'm just going to call you from now on. So Danielle, where can our listeners find you?
Yes.
Great question.
On the interwebs. Where do they find you on the interwebs?
I just redid my website. It's daniellefarage.com. And I'm doing in 2023 a lot more speaking, a lot more workshops, a lot more really to help bridge the gap between generations.
So book her for speaking engagements is what she's saying, people.
Basically. And follow me on LinkedIn because I write a lot of content there that I'm sure will brighten your day.
Listen, she's a LinkedIn top voice. Do it. Thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you for dealing with us.
Thank you, guys.
This will be fun. Can't wait to get this show out. It's going to be really cool. So thank you for swinging through.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tolerating us.
Yeah, well, I have a brother, so.
Oh, cool,
Nice.
cool.
All righty. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Danielle. Take care.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.